growing high-value, expensive crops like strawberries, you always want to be planting several years in advance. You don't want to just kind of take some weed-infested piece of ground that has poor fertility and say, oh, I'm going to invest thousands of dollars in strawberry plants. So we're always thinking many years in advance. And typically for something like strawberries, you want a lot of organic material because you're going to be cultivating them. They have a fairly shallow root system, so they need a really fertile, high organic matter soil to be really successful and also hopefully have your weed situation under control. So the typical rotation is after we plant our rye crop that we use for straw, we underseed red clover and grow that for a couple years. And then typically after that couple years of cover crop, that ground gets fall plowed. So all that vegetation, all that nitrogen and organic matter from the clover crop is plowed under in the fall. That gives it all winter to kind of break down and rot, and allows the frost to kind of heave the soil and make it really nice and dry and fluffy, because we want to transplant strawberries as early as we possibly can. They come out of a 28-degree cooler and they're dormant. You want to put them in as cold and wet a soil as you can and give them a nice gradual, slow waking up period where they can develop a root system before it gets warm and dry. So we take that fall plowed ground and do just a minimal amount of tillage, go over it a couple times with some disc to just finish breaking it down and make a nice fine, what would be kind of a typical seed bed, maybe a little damper than a typical seed bed, but it can't be really wet or the transplanter gums up and it doesn't really work. We get our plants from Norse Nursery in Massachusetts. We typically buy 25 or 30,000 strawberry plants and several hundred to 1,000 raspberry plants.
I'll plop them, you stir them.
We get our soil fit. We get some weather where it's not raining or it's not freezing or so brutal you can't work out there. We get the transplanter set up, the mechanical transplanter. We take some 55-gallon drums and we whip up some planting gel, which is a white powder that's a polymer that's like a bunch of little microscopic sponges that absorbs a huge amount of water. And then we dip all the bare root strawberry plants in that and coats the roots, and then we transplant them. The beauty of that product is it puts this wet, gooey gel around the roots, which keeps them from drying out initially. Over the next month or so, as the moisture cycles, as it gets dry, the roots draw moisture out of that gel and keeps them alive and keeps them growing. And every time you irrigate or water, that gel reabsorbs a big mass of water and pulls it close to the roots so that during the next dry stage, the plants have access to water. It's well worth the advantages of what it does for the plants. Typically for transplanting strawberries, you need a minimum of 3 people, tractor driver and 2 people sitting on the transplanter. The transplanter is just a really rudimentary device. It opens up a furrow. It has some rubber fingers on it that grab the plant. They're setting a plant in those fingers about every 2 seconds or so. And you have 2 people working on each side of it. So they're alternating. So a person's putting a plant in while another one's getting one ready. It sets it into the furrow, and then a pair of packing wheels close the dirt back around the roots of the plant. The soil conditions have to be about right. And then you have the myriad of adjustments on the planter to get it at the right depth and to get it the right spacing. But once it's all set up and working, I mean, it's a wonderful machine, and you can plant as many as a couple thousand plants an hour if you got a couple people that are really fast that are sitting on it. With strawberries, we, on a yearly or bi-yearly basis, we're doing soil tests to see where our nutrient levels are and where organic matter are. But typically, when we plant a field of strawberries, we'll put an initial base, just a balanced fertilizer, like a triple 15 or something, where we're getting at least 40, 50 pounds to the acre of the 3 basic nutrients, just kind of as a base level. And because your potassium and your phosphorus, you want to get that incorporated into the soil because it's not going to translocate very well. Then we plant the strawberries, and you really don't need to add any fertility to them until they really get going. But usually a week or 2 before they start doing runners, we'll add just a light application of nitrogen in the form of calcium nitrate, just to make sure they've got plenty of nitrogen to make that big burst of growth. So far to date, we really don't have big issues with strawberries as far as insect pests go. So I really don't do much in the way of insecticides and stuff. You can crop strawberries and harvest them. I mean, there's people that grow them for 4 or 5 years in the same spot. When we first started out, we would crop them for 3 years. But we've come to the conclusion now where we only actually crop them for 2 years and then we plow them under and replace them. So every year we're planting 25, 30,000 plants and planting 3 or 4 acres, and we're plowing under 3 or 4 acres that's on its third year. I mean, obviously that's labor intensive and you have a lot of money invested in plants, but if you have the land, I think it's the best way to go because you have really healthy, productive plants and you really minimize the chances of building up a lot of insect and diseases and weed seeds and stuff in your planting.